What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Cattywampus Acres. It's Jason. If this is your first time joining us, hello, it's nice to meet you. Today, what I wanted to talk about is tomatoes and how we're growing our tomatoes and how we can show you how you can grow your tomatoes and make them huge and get tons of returns from just one tomato plant. Now, we've been using this method for a few years now and we love it, and it's called string training or string training and suckering, but I wanted to show you guys how to do it because no one had ever showed me how to do it. And when we learned, we realized how amazing it is and how many tomatoes we get and how you can use such a small area to grow tons and tons of tomatoes, and probably more tomatoes than you even need. Now in a second you're gonna see I'm not actually changing clothes. We filmed this the other day, but I realized I had missed some things and I wanted to go over some stuff. One important thing I wanted to tell you about string training and suckering tomatoes, specifically suckering tomatoes, is suckering tomatoes can only be done on an indeterminate tomato plant.
Indeterminate tomato plant.
So these ones that I'm standing in our enclosed garden here, these are indeterminate tomato plants. As you can see, we have some tomato plants that are 6 and 7 feet tall behind me. They are trained to a single vine, and these are indeterminate tomato plants, which means that they do not have a growth height that they're going to stop at. So what I'm going to do is let me take you out to our big garden, and I'm going to show you some determinate plants just so you can know the difference between the two and know what you need to do and which ones you can string train and sucker and which ones you cannot. So let's go ahead and get out to the garden. All right, so I brought you out to our big garden, and I am standing here with our Roma tomato plants. These are a paste style tomato, but what we love them for and what we think they're perfect for and what we use them for is for salsa. We make tons of fresh salsa. We have our peppers and stuff over here, and we love it, love it, love it. We can eat so much of it. Roma tomatoes are an example of a determinate tomato plant.
A determinate tomato plant.
And I can show you what I mean by that by saying these tomato plants are only about 4 or so feet tall. Roma tomato plants will not get taller than this. Any of your determinate types of tomato plants are going to have a set height that they're going to grow to. I know Haas Tools and several of the other companies have different types. We've only grown the Romas as far as determinate tomatoes, but I think there are several others offered by a lot of the seed companies. But what you're going to notice is when you look at your seed packet, it should tell you somewhere on the front or back whether they're determinate or indeterminate. And so this is very important before you get going with what we're gonna show you today. So what you can see here with the determinate tomato plant is it's gonna grow all over the place. We got them caged. You can do the Florida weave where you weave them in and out of strings. You can stake them, a lot of different things. You can use a trellis. I know a lot of the other homesteads and farms use trellises. Any of them are good, but just know that if you sucker a determinate tomato, you're gonna significantly hinder your growth. Now with an indeterminate tomato, like I just showed you, those you want to sucker them and you're gonna get explosive growth because you're taking all of that energy and you're putting it right back up into the tomato plant itself. Just remember this, if you remember nothing else, only sucker indeterminate tomato plants. Do not sucker your determinate tomato plants. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. You're probably gonna notice we do things a little bit different, and what we try and do is mimic a commercial greenhouse outside. Here in Georgia, it is super hot and it is super muggy, and so it's basically like a greenhouse all throughout the summer. What we try and do is, and what has worked for us very well for the past few years, is growing vertically, growing our tomatoes vertically. And the nice thing about this is you can do this no matter how much space you have. Even if you have a 1/4 of an acre in your backyard there, that you can use that and grow a ton of tomatoes and other fruits like cucumbers and things like that. A lot of things can grow vertically, squash, a lot of stuff. This year we put these steel cables up. They're wrapped so they don't get rusted, but I'm gonna end up, because they're so heavy, I'm gonna end up putting some supports in here. And we use this tomato twine. This tomato twine we use to string up. We basically stake it at the bottom. This is an extremely heavy one, if you couldn't tell. And then we grow these tomato plants up this tomato twine. The next thing I need to show you is very important. And this is what allows you to grow to a single vine and to allow your tomatoes to give you an abundance of fruit. And actually, you could grow these as long as your growing season goes, and you could do what's called the lower and lean method, where as these grow and you pick up the stuff from the bottom, you end up letting it down and you just have a big old vine at the bottom and all your fruits growing up at the top. So let me get you in closer here and show you some basic tomato anatomy, I guess. All right, I've brought you in close to our Black Beauties here. We got these seeds from Baker Creek. So this is basically how we start with the tomato plant. And you can see these are starting to get to where they're really ripe. We got a ton of fruit on this one, almost to the point where they're like running out of space. Here's our main vine right here. From your main vine, you will get a bunch of leaves growing off. These are a leaf. And then you will also get these fruits growing off here. And then I'm probably gonna have to bring you in close, but here's a good example of how a sucker starts right over here. And if you've never heard of a sucker before, a sucker is basically this little tiny plant that tries to grow off of your main vine. Now, if we were to just let these go in the ground, this vine would look like a million different vines growing all over the place. Let me bring you in close to this sucker so I can explain what's going on here. So this is a really small one, but you see this guy right here? This guy right here is a sucker. So there's one thing you can learn about tomatoes is if you were to just cut this here and put this in water, all these little hair, they would all grow into roots of their own. So you could propagate these from basically wherever. But this guy here, this is a sucker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in here, and this is a small one. I'm just going to snap this sucker off. All right? And the sucker will grow between our main vine, which is right here, and a leaf node, or whatever you want to call it here. So you got our leaf and our main vine, and then you have a fruit right here, and that's your fruit node. And so your sucker grows out of here, and the sucker is trying to create its own separate tomato plant. And we don't want that, because if you've watched any of our other videos, like our pepper plants or anything, or if you know anything about gardening, basically what happens is we want to direct all of this energy from this plant up through this vine into all of these fruit nodes that we have, because the fruit's what we want. We don't want to eat the leaves and the vine, we want to eat the fruit. And look what I've also found here. Oh, look at this guy. We'll end up giving this goober to the chickens. Aside from suckering these tomatoes, another thing we do is you can see these little clips, and then on our tomato twine here, and this is how we grow our vine up, and this is how we grow vertically on these tomatoes. And let me show you. Whoop. Got it. Let me show you these tomato clips. So this is what they look like. We get them on Amazon. We'll put a link down below for these and for the tomato twine. I bought both of them on there. And you can see this is how they work. And they have a little, got a little guy back here. See that? And that's where you pinch your string, your twine. And then they just close around there. And the tomatoes won't get that big, so they won't grow into that. So it works pretty well. All we do is, and I'm sure there's more than one way to do this, but this is the way we do it. You just find your main vine, and you'll basically attach this onto your twine, and you'll put this around your main vine and just clip it just like that. And that's how we grow our tomatoes. Now, one thing I want you guys to remember is we try and sucker below our top blossoms. And so this is our top blossoms. The blossoms eventually turn into a tomato or fruit. And so we try, if there's a sucker growing out here, we leave it alone. And it's always good to take maybe a couple looks before you sucker your tomato, because what we've done in the past, I know people who sucker tomatoes, this happens sometimes, is we will end up suckering the main vine. And so you got to be careful, because sometimes they look alike, and sometimes you'll have this V thing. So let me show you a few more examples of how we do these tomatoes. Well, isn't it awesome when you are trying to look for an example of something and it pops right in front of you? So here's an example where we've failed to sucker this at the top, and so it looks like we have basically we have a V shape. This has got fruit on it, and this has got fruit on it. I want to say that this one is our main vine, because this one seems to be the most vertical. And another thing I can point out too is, so this is going to be our sucker. This also has its own sucker on it. So let me take you up close so you can see another sucker, an example of what we're going to do with this to fix it. All right, so here's our V. This is the one I want to be the main, and so you don't want to break this off, because what will end up happening is as you break this off, it will peel part of your tomato and harm it and allow some disease in. So I'm going to actually come close here, and I'm going to nip this off. All right, so now we have our main vine. It's already got us on it, and as you can see, it's already growing up through our mesh, and so this thing is already 7 feet tall. Pretty neat. With this sucker that we've trimmed off, it gives me a good way to show you how to take care of this and a little bit more example. So if this is your main vine, you have your leaf, you have your fruit nodes, leaf, leaf, and then if you look, and this is the way to distinguish a sucker, you see how that grows right out of the middle there? See the leaf, vine, this is your sucker. Break that right off, and then you have almost like an L. Then you have fruit growing all the top. So being that if this was our vine, this is our top fruit, we wouldn't sucker anywhere up here. We would just leave that be and let it grow out a little bit. If I can be honest with you, suckering sometimes is like an everyday job, because if we miss one day, you'll come out and you'll just have tomatoes going every which way. Let's just show you some more of what we're doing here, and I'm actually going to show you how we start one on a string that is trying to fall over on us. Before I go too far, I wanted to show you this too. So this is a really heavy tomato plant. It's another Black Beauty, and we have some fruit growing here that we're waiting for them to ripen. You always want to let your tomatoes ripen on the vine, makes them way better. But below this fruit, we have a bunch of leaf nodes, and so I want to get rid of these leaf nodes, because what that'll do is this line here we have, this row of tomatoes, it'll promote healthy airflow through here, because you don't want any mold or anything happening. You don't want stagnant air growing between your tomatoes. So I'm going to go in here and take off all of these leaf nodes that are below our bottom fruit. And so I'm taking the leaves off below our bottom fruit, and I'm not taking any suckers off above our top fruit. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me get you up close here. This is the tomato twine. I don't think there's anything special about it. And we just got this, and it pulls right out of the middle. And the nice thing is it doesn't get all tangled. We see what I try and do is I see where the bottom of my tomato plant is. This poor thing is just leaning over, and I'll go right up from that, go up to my cable. I want to know too that you don't have to use cable. You can use wire, you can use a piece of wood, whatever works for your setup, but this works for our setup. And I will just tie a knot up here, doesn't matter what kind, I'm not a Boy Scout, and I will just go right down to the bottom, and I need a stake. Ooh, there's a stake off camera stake throw. Then I need something sharp, and so this is what I do. I take our garden stake. This is just our typical garden stake. I put the string through it, run it all the way down next to our plant. Now once we're down next to the plant, I just shove that in the ground sort of close so it sort of grabs tight, and then I will tie off our twine after I snip it off. I'll just try and hold it tight and then tie it. I think the tighter the better, in my opinion. Alright, so now we have our twine done, and let me bring you in close and show you how we're going to do the bottom of this. So this is our poor tomato plant here, and here's our twine, and so we need our clips now to string this up. This is I think this is a Sweet 100 tomato plant. It's definitely yep, Sweet 100, and it's marked. My lovely wife marked that for us. All right, so we'll go ahead and string this up. I need clips. Clips. Oh, clips. All right. So once again, same clips we're using, and we're going to use the same method where we just clip around the twine, and we find ourselves a good strong base here, and just one-handed we can clip that right in there, or two-handed, whatever. Yep, and they just clip just like that, and we'll put a few more. I try and do them every, I don't know, 8-10 inches, something like that, whatever it takes, depending on how heavy your tomato plant is. Another thing you can do is, if you don't want to use the clips, is basically wrap it around. What I do notice is you will cause some damage to the main stem like that occasionally. Oh, we just lost a cherry tomato. I know, these are delicious. All right, so we're moving up. And as you can see, this lovely tomato plant is just going right up for us. And we'll check for suckers after I'm done, which I don't see any. Put our top clip in. And sometimes it helps too, just for extra support, is if you put it right directly under a leaf node. So there we go. This one's all staked up. So just to get our healthy airflow going here, I'm gonna get rid of some of these leaf nodes down here. All right, so there we go. Looking pretty good. I don't see any suckers. We'll check this is where the sucker would come out, right here. Oh, there's one, here. This is a good example. This is how they start. See how they're really tiny and harmless looking? We'll just go in there, nip that right off. Doesn't even do anything. And so this is our top blossom, so we're gonna stop right there. All right, well, thank you guys again for joining us here at Cattywampus Acres. Hopefully you learned a little bit today about how we take care of our tomatoes, and maybe something you can implement on your homestead or your farm and grow yourself tons of delicious sweet tomatoes. We have a whole bunch of gardening videos. We have a whole bunch of goat videos and chicken videos and everything else. Please go check out those other videos. If you like this one, give us a thumbs up. If you hated it, give us a thumbs down. And please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell notification down at the bottom so you can be notified of everything we're doing here in the farm. But for now, we have so much work to do and we got to get back into that. So we will see you guys next time.